the Diocese of Orange, California. The story of the faith in this region began with saintly Spanish Franciscan missionary priests, grew exponentially with the influx of European, Vietnamese, and Mexican immigrants, and carries on today under the leadership of its current apostle, Bishop Kevin W. Vann.
Yeah, I guess I'm looking back now, I have to say, I'll be a bishop 15 years this year and a priest 39, so nearly 4 years as a priest. You know, really every experience was a moment of grace.
This is the story of the bishops of America, the shepherds of the past and the shepherds of today, who through their callings and ministry carry the church into the future. It's also the story of their parish, their church, the cathedral. This is The Chair, an exploration of what it means to be an apostle in America. Orange County spans 782 square miles of beautiful Southern California landscape stretching along the Pacific Ocean. It's also home to the Diocese of Orange, a community of faith with a rich history and a vibrant ethnic diversity.
Orange County has a number of cities. You could say Fullerton, Orange, Garden Grove, Anaheim, all those are all cities of Orange. So part of the reason the diocese was separated and formed in 1976 was the population here had grown. It was a sense that it had a distinct identity from the Archdiocese of Los Angeles.
The Diocese of Orange, California plays a profound role in shaping both culture and community, as well as landscape in Orange County. The historic roots of Orange County and Catholicism are inextricably tied together.
The first Catholic presence in the region can be traced back to the establishment of the Mission San Juan Capistrano, which is established 200 years before the establishment of the diocese in 1776.
From the very beginning, the area, which is now known as Orange County, has had a Catholic presence, beginning with the Franciscans who came up through the Baja Peninsula and founded many missions. Probably the most notable of all of these is Father Junipero Serra, who founded 9 missions, the first one being in San Diego, and then in a sense worked his way up the coast of California. Perhaps the mission that he's most noted for in Orange County is Mission San Juan Capistrano, a mission that he created working with the Native American community there, teaching them skills while evangelizing the faith with them as well.
Father Junipero Serra is the first saint to be canonized on U.S. soil. And this happened in 2015 when the Holy Father Pope Francis visited America. In his homily during the canonization Mass, the Pope said of Serra, he was the embodiment of a church which goes forth, a church which sets out to bring everywhere the reconciling tenderness of God.
Though the legacy of the missions remains contested, the mission remains a spiritual treasure of the diocese, reminding Catholics of their earliest roots and of the pioneering work of those who first came to plant the seeds of Catholicism in the region.
In the late 1800s, many families start to arrive from farming communities in Europe and find a place to settle in the Orange County area, recognizing that their skills, their abilities are able to be translated into the vast lands of, at that point, was open territory in California.
By 1840, California's Catholic population had grown so substantial that it needed its own diocese. Now, Pope Gregory XVI erected the Diocese of the Two Californias, with the diocesan seat in Monterey. The diocese comprised essentially everything west of the Colorado River. Now, after Alta California was ceded to the United States, the Mexican government objected to the American bishop holding jurisdiction over parishes in Baja California, and so the diocese was split in two. By 1876, the see was transferred from Monterey to Los Angeles. Catholics in Orange County remained part of what became the Archdiocese of Los Angeles until March 24, 1976, when Pope Paul VI established the Diocese of Orange. William Robert Johnson was appointed the first Bishop of Orange, a rapidly growing diocese with an increasingly diverse population.
The first bishop of the diocese was William Johnson, who came to the Diocese of Orange after serving as auxiliary bishop in Los Angeles. He came to the Diocese of Orange with extensive experience in Catholic charities, and that was reflected in his pastoral priorities. As bishop, he made it a point to visit inmates in local prisons. He was also an outspoken advocate of nuclear disarmament and encouraged Catholics to welcome refugees from Southeast Asia, a decision that shaped the future face of the diocese.
Around the mid-20th century, we start to see hundreds of thousands of Vietnamese who are migrating to the United States, escaping political oppression and conditions in their homeland. The influence of Vietnamese Catholics in the diocese has been extraordinary. The first generation brought with them an intense dedication and devotion that took root and continues to influence Catholicism in the diocese.
Southern California continues to be a magnet for Vietnamese immigration today. Their presence in the diocese has left its mark on parish life, as well as the life of the diocese. The Diocese of Orange was the first to ordain a Vietnamese American to the priesthood, as well as the first to have a Vietnamese American bishop.
Auxiliary Bishop Dominic Mai Thong Lung served the people of Orange from 2003 to 2015. Now, he was an outspoken proponent of the rights of Catholics in Vietnam. His Episcopal motto, "You are strangers and aliens no longer," was a great inspiration to Vietnamese Catholics throughout the country.
For a diocese that geographically is such a small space, it is what I would consider to be a microcosm of the universal church. It is multi-ethnic, multicultural, and multilingual in its composition. The Catholic population of Orange County is made up of Spanish speakers, Vietnamese, Chinese, Korean, Filipino, Samoan, just to name a few. And there are masses celebrated in these languages all around the diocese.
The Diocesan Cathedral is one of the newest in the country and has a remarkable story. The church was established by Reverend Robert Schuller, a Protestant minister who came to Southern California in 1955. He started out holding religious services at a drive-in movie theater. That ministry then grew into the Crystal Cathedral, which is one of the first recognizable megachurches in the United States. And it gained a great deal of prominence because of its televised ministry, broadcasting its services on TV stations across the country, reaching millions of households every Sunday.
When the Crystal Cathedral went bankrupt, the Diocese of Orange acquired the property, recognizing the value of its central location and its large campus. The diocese spent many years renovating the cathedral to make it suitable for Catholic worship, but it has also taken advantage of the resources that are offered here, especially its broadcast and TV studios.
You know, the Diocese of Orange over the past years has really grown, and with all its multicultural setting and all the folks here, it really needed a cathedral that was a main focal point. We had, which many dioceses have, a parish church that was designated the cathedral, Holy Family in Orange, which is a nice parish. So, but I think the cathedral here now inspires the folks and reflects the reality of the multicultural reality and all the folks here in the diocese. And, you look up, you're drawn to God.
Reverend Schuler constructed this crystal cathedral in 1980 with the architect Philip Johnson. Inside is all light. It's got great height and great light. It's a super modern aesthetic, really even postmodern, but it sort of holds on to this idea of height and light, which is sought after in the medieval Gothic buildings. So that great symbolism of Christ's light is absolutely present. So when this church was made into a Catholic church, and a cathedral in particular, really the challenge is, how do you Catholicize something that was made for a different purpose? And also, how do you make it fitting for the cathedral's liturgy? How do you make it an icon of the diocese it serves and represents, that it is the mother church for? One of the things is, of course, to bring in the liturgical furnishings necessary for the religious rites of the Catholic Mass. So the altar of sacrifice, a ambo, the cathedra, of course, the seat of the bishop, a font, a baptismal font. In this space, one of the issues is to make them large enough to really be appropriate for the scale of this building, which is gigantic. You'll see that they're made out of marble, and this stone is a noble and enduring material.
I made 3 trips to Italy to check the marble out and to say what I wanted, what I didn't want. All this marble comes from Northern Italy. The white behind the chair is from Carrara. All the rest of this is from around an area called Verona, San Bonifacio. And of course, there's a mosaic related to Guadalupe, who's the patroness of the diocese.
A really interesting adaptation that was made for the function of the building to sort of keep the inside from turning into a greenhouse. There's a lot of light coming into these 11,000 panes of glass, was to create these sort of aluminum deflectors, which are in the shape of a quatrefoil. So this is really in the great tradition of the church, which is to give meaning and purpose to these functional things. So it's not just functional, it also serves a symbolic meaning.
One of the most striking ceremonies of the dedication was the night before, when we blessed the relics. We had 10 permanent deacons, all in red dalmatics, bring the relics in, processed 2 here, and prayed all night with the relics. And they were accompanied by 2 people from that ethnic group, like the Vietnamese. And so it was really striking. We processed over from the Arboretum over to here of an evening. And it was really in that red with candles. It was really striking. Here we have, reflecting the culture, we have the Vietnamese martyrs, the Mexican martyrs. We would have the Korean martyrs, Junipero Serra, who was one of the secondary patrons of the diocese, or the Guadalupe being first, and then a relic somebody gave me of Pope John Paul II. So those are all underneath there.
The crest of the bishop and the Pope, under which the Crystal Cathedral was elevated from a Protestant church into a Catholic cathedral, are prominent when you walk in the door. So you really have a sense right away of the history of the transformation of this building.
The cathedra inside Christ Cathedral represents Bishop Vann's role as the Apostle of Orange.
I'm a Midwesterner. I grew up in Springfield, Illinois, a land of Lincoln, so they say. We were very, an average middle-class Catholic family. We were 6 children, 5 boys and 1 girl. My mother was a maternity nurse, and my father worked for the Postal Service. That's sort of who we were. We had a good home, good parents, a really good parish, St. Agnes. We had a lot of friends, my mother and dad did. I got a regular college degree. I was a medical technologist. Then I worked for 3 years as a laboratory technologist at St. John's Hospital in Springfield. So I worked there for 3 years. But I always thought of being a priest because we had great priests who were examples, had a wonderful parish. And my aunt was a sister, and so that was part of the culture at that time. And I had thought about it, but I didn't decide to do that until after I had worked. So I told my mother and father. They were not surprised, as other people were not surprised. It's spent a year in the seminary in Springfield, Illinois. In 1976, at the Little Diocesan Seminary of the Immaculate Conception. And then I was there 1 year. And then I went 4 years to Kenrick Seminary in St. Louis, Missouri. And then I was ordained now, almost 39 years ago in 1981. And then a month before I was ordained, the bishop at that time, Bishop Joseph Nicholas, he wanted to see me. I went to see me. He said, Kevin, he said, I'm sending you to Rome to get a degree in canon law. So I was ordained in May of 1981 and went to Rome the following fall and spent there 4 years and got my doctorate in canon law at the Angelicum. I was assigned to a place called Blessed Sacrament in Springfield, Illinois, where years later I became the pastor. But it was the parish that had been my grandparents' parish, and it's the parish where my mother and father had been married, but then worked part-time in the marriage tribunal as a judge and those sorts of things. Then I became a pastor of a little country town called St. Benedict's in Auburn, Illinois for 2 years, which was a wonderful assignment. And then I was sent over to a place called Our Lady of Lourdes in Decatur, Illinois, which is 50 miles east of Springfield. And both in Decatur and in Auburn, I took care of little outstanding missions if I needed to. So I was there in Decatur for 9 years. And then I was sent back to Springfield to be pastor of Blessed Sacrament, where I had been the parochial vicar years ago.
On May 17, 2005, Bishop Vann was named the coadjutor bishop of Fort Worth, Texas. He would become the ordinary of the diocese on July 13th.
Well, it's a funny story. I was in Springfield at Blessed Sacrament, and I got a phone call from my secretary. She goes, well, you have a phone call, and somebody wants to talk to you. And I said, well, kid, I have to be in St. Louis in 2 hours. And she goes, well, I think it's important. So I took the phone call. You've heard these things before. He says, is this Monsignor Vann? I said, yes, it is, Archbishop. He says, well, the Holy Father has appointed you as the coadjutor bishop of Fort Worth, Texas. So I said, Your Excellency, if that's what Holy Father wants me to do, I'll do it. I'm a great believer in God's providence, having been taught by the Vincentians and the Daughters of Charity, who really lived that. The Diocese of Fort Worth is not unlike here. We had a lot of Vietnamese. So from them, I learned my first words in Vietnamese. And then certainly Hispanics. And then we had Koreans. And, so we had that kind of mix already in Fort Worth, Texas. Fort Worth, Texas, especially around Feast Day of Our Lady of Guadalupe, is just huge. All I could draw on was my experience of having been a pastor and a parish priest back in Illinois. That's how I viewed my role, writ large. So that's the experience that I drew on when I was in Fort Worth. And so, I was get out on the weekends, go to whatever to kind of get to know the folks. And really, Texas is a wonderful place. I really grew to love the people there. I was there a little over 7 years. And I learned the culture and the history of Texas, which is very unique. August of 2012. My priest secretary, he said, why don't we go to the KC convention? I said, well, yeah, that'd be a good idea. I said, oh, well, that's in Anaheim, Burbank. We can go to Disneyland and all those kind of things. So I did. And part of it was that we got taken on a tour of the grounds here. The diocese had just bought it. Before all this, we got to see the property, and it's really beautiful. The bishops were given a number of different tours, and I think Cardinal Worrell took us around, and I think certainly Bishop Brown and Father Smith. So the funny story I tell on myself is that I was looking around and thought, gee, this is beautiful, I said, but I knew Bishop Brown was retiring because I've known him for years. When I was a graduate student in Rome, he was in sabbatical. He was very kind to me then. So I said, yeah, this is a beautiful place, but it's going to be a lot of work for whoever gets it. That was in the middle of August. The following month in September, I got the phone call from Archbishop Vigano then that said the Holy Father is sending you to the Diocese of Orange, California. So that was that.
As Bishop of Orange, Bishop Vann has worked hard to shepherd his people and spread the good news of Jesus Christ.
I try to make myself available. I'm out in all the parishes all the times, so they know me as just not somebody in office, but as a pastor, somebody who cares too. So I've been blessed here now, nearly these 7 years, with a lot of good friends whom I know and who I can call on and that kind of thing. So I'm not just pray for our Bishop Kevin so they know and see me. You have huge groups of people, like this is the largest population of concentration of Vietnamese outside of Saigon here. And certainly if you go to Santa Ana, great Hispanic numbers, in other parts of the diocese. So you have all those, and Koreans, you have all those groups who really we try to keep engaged and keep involved. Yeah, I guess I'm looking back now, I have to say, I'll be a bishop 15 years this year and a priest 39, so nearly 4 years as a priest. You know, really every experience was a moment of grace, whether it was good or not. I look back at my mother and father, they lived through the Depression, through some terrible things. My father's father left him when he was young, so they learned how to face difficult things, and they kind of taught me how to do that. Later on when I came here, I learned from Father St. Junipero Serra's model, Siempre adelante, you just go ahead, trusting in God. I have more experiences of gratitude than desolation.